Hello and welcome to the third video in my Mastering Photoshop series. And we're starting here with an image that has been sent to me by a chap in one of the Facebook groups that I run. He's called Robert Hatton, and I saw the image he shared, which was this image, and I asked him if he'd send me the raw file for me to work on. It looked like the kind of shot that had some potential. In fact, I quite liked it, but I wanted to see what I could do with the image, because I think it's quite a challenging shot to edit, and it's certainly quite a bright photograph. But there was just something about it that I thought, I'll see what I can do. Straight away, I've opened it in Camera Raw. I've never even edited this. This is the first time I've done anything with it. Obviously, we've got overexposure up here. So I'll do my lens correction that I always do. And the first thing that I will do, as opposed to messing with the tone curve, is pull back the highlights and see what happens to that sky. And you see, it does a great job on pulling those whites back. So I'm going to do that. The rest of it, when I zoom in on it, it's quite nice. It's got some really nice texture. It's got some nice colours. And it's really, this is kind of what I'm talking about when I tell people it takes a while to really get to grips with pulling the best out of an image. And you can't instantly just go, right, I must do this, must do that. There's no formula. You have to look at an image and think, right, because it was quite high key, it's got a feeling that the shadows have been pulled quite hard. That's how it feels to me. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually lift the curve, but I'm also going to pull it down. And then I'm going to lift it again. So what I'm in effect doing is I'm darkening, not the blacks, but I'm darkening all the dark tones near the black. Just to give it a bit more of a realistic feel. I don't want to do anything with the highlights. We've already sort of dealt with those to a certain extent. And what we're going to do now is something we've not done yet in any of the videos. I'm going to look at the actual individual colours. So this is a really important part of Photoshop in Camera Raw. It's the fourth box along. You can do exactly the same in Lightroom, and you get the different colours all split down into these individual channels. And you can adjust the hue, saturation and luminance of each one. So it's really a question of looking and thinking, right, well, there's blues in this sky up here. Blues obviously reflected in the water. So if I change the luminance of the blues, it has the similar effect to darkening it down. And whenever I adjust blues, I usually take aqua in the similar direction, because there's usually a crossover of pixels, and this helps avoid banding in the sky. The yellows and the oranges, oh, I like that. As I pull the yellows to the right, it kind of adds a bit more contrast into the scene, which I like. Similarly with greens, and often with greens and yellows, they're very sort of mixed together in this kind of image. It's hard to separate them. I'll not do much with the orange. And that's good. I'll then look at the actual hue of the individual colours. And the greens, I often push the greens more towards yellow, because they can look funky. See, if I push greens all the way to the right, they start looking very, very vivid. And I kind of like them a bit more yellowy. And also the yellows in this scene. I'm going to push the yellow slightly towards the green, and I often do that. The oranges will go slightly red. And that's good. That's a good start, that. I'll then have a look at my dehaze, No. This is a good example of where clarity I absolutely would not use. If I put clarity into this, look how horrible it goes. I hate that effect. I really, really don't like that effect. And so with an image like this, I would generally add a little bit of negative clarity just to take those harsh edges away and make it all look a bit softer. Vibrance. We'll add a little bit of vibrance, but we've already played with the colours a bit, so we don't need to go too mad with that. And then finally the temperature. Now, I like it a little warmer than it was. And tint, as I said yesterday, got to be careful with the tint about there, and that's good. I'm going to open that image. It's taking a while to go. There we go. And the first question then is, how do I want to crop it? Now, the bottom of the frame, I really like this water. Look at the texture in that. I think it's really nice. But it's too tall and thin, this. So instantly I'm thinking, the interest is here. I love the reflections. I love this. I'm not sure this right hand side adds much. And I'm not sure the top really adds too much either. So my thinking is straight away, instead of 6x4, I wonder how this looks 5x7. So I'll go to the crop tool, click it to 5 to 7. There we go. And I'm going to just pull that in a little bit on the right to get rid of some of that space that I'm not that interested in. I'm going to just leave that branch there because I think that's needed. Where is it? Yeah, I don't like that. See how that branch just stops there? It sort of goes off the top of the image. That doesn't work. So perhaps that is needed. That's better. There we go. I think that's beginning to look quite good. What I would like to do is darken further these highlights. The reason I didn't do it any more in the first stage is because I want to do this using layers. Now, as I said, I'm going to do an in-depth tutorial on layers. But for the time being, I'm going to now throw this back into Photoshop, filter, camera raw filter. And I'm going to try and darken these bright areas down a bit by pulling that down. Now I like that effect that it's done. It's added detail into these mountains. It's darkened that sky down. I like that. There we go. Okay. And we've got two layers now. We've got the newly adjusted layer and the layer below. And the reason I did it as a layer is it's darkened that top section too much. There's like some almost vignetting happening there. So I'm going to add this layer on. I'm going to add a mask, a white mask. I'll use a black brush. For anyone who doesn't understand layers at all, you'll just have to wait for a further video to really get to grips with this stuff. But it's not that complicated. There we go. And that's just darken that down, and I like that. I'll then play with the opacity. And remove it from this section. It doesn't need it there. There we go. That works quite nicely, I think. Super. Now I'll merge that down. And I think that's coming together now into quite a decent image. It's got a nice feel to it. I'm just wondering if this dark area in the middle, I wonder if we can keep those darks but brighten the lights. So again, I'm going to duplicate the image. You get the feel of how I work now. I keep duplicating images, merging them down, go back into camera raw. And this is a technique that I often use. I forget about the whole scene and I zoom in on the section I'm interested in, which is this. And I think, right, let's pretend that this on its own was an image, just this. How would I edit it? Well, what I would do is I would brighten these, but still maintaining the darks in between. So I'm really just adding a bit of contrast to this sort of area. I might look at adjusting my whites. See, I like what pushing the whites does, and then the highlights will just knock this bit of that roof off, while still maintaining what I've done with the whites, which works quite well. I won't do any more to it than that. I'll just click OK. And you see what I've done there has added way too much brightness to the top of the screen, and it's removed some of the work that I've just done. So I only want to apply this into this central area. So I'll apply a black mask and I'll go over it with a white brush, just to lift this central area. That's all I want to do. Now to a black brush, and to knock it back a bit from the top of the roof, because that's now gone just a touch too bright for me. And let's see what's happened there when it's just lifted it, and I like that effect. Going to paint it out from that top section, and that's lifted that nicely. I really like what just happened there with that, so I'll merge that down. And if we now click back to the original image that it came out of camera raw, so I did a fair bit in camera raw to start with, and we had that image. I've started pushing it and creating that. Now, something that I started doing a few years ago, really, after listening to Mark Littlejohn, a lecture that he did at UCLan in Preston. And he talked about split toning, and I've never done split toning. So I'm going to have a go at this. Again, duplicate the layer. I'll go back into camera raw, again, filter and camera raw. And it's the 5th bar along, split toning. And what this does is it lets me independently adjust the colour of the highlights and the shadows. So I normally start with the shadows, and I leave the hue at red to start with, and I'll put the saturation to about 20. And from 20 there, this is adding, I'm going to make it 18. This is adding red, and then as I move right, it goes through yellow, into green, into blues, purples, and back through to red. So how I do this is I just kind of look at the image and just see where is it that I like the effect effectively. I'm not particularly bothered where it is. It's more about how do I like it, and I like it with those nice reds in the shadows. It's maybe a bit strong, so I'll pull the saturation back, and having done that, I then go to my highlights. I'll add some saturation, 10, and I'll then move along and see where do I... Oh, no, I prefer this in the cooler tones nearer the blues. So I like the highlights being quite blue, and I like the shadows being quite warm. And then once that's done, I've got the balance, and this adjusts the balance between the two sliders. And I like the weight maybe slightly to the left there, slightly more weighted towards the shadows. It sometimes can change the saturation and stuff, so I might just add a bit of vibrance, and I do prefer that vibrance there. On the whole image is more vibrant, but it's overcooked the greens and yellows, so I will go back into the colour slider and look at the saturation of the yellows and the greens, and I'm just going to knock them back just a touch, and okay, and let's see what that split toning has done. So that's as was, and that's the split toned. I do prefer it, and sometimes I would adjust the opacity of that and remove that down, but on this occasion I won't. I like it as it is, and that'd be my finished image there. That'd be my take on that photograph. That's how I'd edit it. So what you can take away from this video is not so much any specific technique to practice. There's nothing to sort of go away with, oh, you understand a new tool. It's more about how I'm approaching this image and working my way through it, deciding what to do. What's my vision? How do I see this being edited? What do I want to do with the darkest tones? How do I want to add contrast through using curves? How do I want to manipulate the lighter areas? And then how can I work with colour? You know, and I'm not just blindly guessing. Obviously with the split toning, there's an element of just sort of working until I like the feel of what happens. But I'm looking and thinking, well, look at the greens, look at the browns, and I'm just sort of working through it until I get an image there which I think works nicely. So that's me for tonight. Get an image yourself, maybe one that you weren't previously too happy with, and try and re-edit it, or get an image you were happy with, and try these same techniques. Try going back into camera raw, adjusting your curves. And for me, it's like adding on lots and lots of small adjustments bit by bit, and incrementally you pull the image out that you want. So thanks for joining me, and there'll be another one tomorrow. I'll speak to you soon. Goodbye.